Okay, Hare Krishna and welcome. So we are continuing here with Venu-gita. We're starting chapter 10. So the chapter is called The Rivers Embrace Murari's Lotus Feet. And it's based on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, chapter 21, text 15. So I'll read that verse first before we start. It's a very sweet verse. Nadyas tada tad upadarya mukunda gitam avarta lakshitamano bhava bhagna vegaha alinganasta gitam urmi bujar murarer grinanti pada yugalam kamalopaharaha. Translation: When the rivers hear the flute song of Krishna, their minds begin to desire him, and thus the flow of their currents is broken, and their waters are agitated, moving around in whirlpools. Then with the arms of their waves, the rivers embrace Murari's lotus feet, and holding on to them, present offerings of lotus flowers. So this is very sweet, seeing that the rivers are not just inanimate, bodies of water, but they're conscious beings, and they have minds, and they have desires, and their minds are desiring Krishna. So, and they're becoming agitated. They have emotions. So their emotions are rising up and they're becoming agitated. And then they also have different body parts. Usually rivers don't have body parts, but these rivers have arms, and they reach out to embrace Murari's lotus feet and to offer him lotus flowers. So we'll go into the text of this chapter. Near the town of Javat, and not distant from the river Yamuna, is the place known as Bakatara, the place where Sri Krishna killed the demon of the name Baka. There is an ancient history of this pastime, which is narrated in the Garga Samhita in the following way. Long ago there lived a demon of the name Utkala, who was the son of an equally unrighteous father known as Hayagriva. After defeating both demigods and men alike, Utkala lived off the spoils of his conquest and reigned in a kingdom full of unparalleled opulence for the duration of 100 years. Like all conditioned souls, Utkala was destined to reap the bitter fruit of his sinful deeds. One day, while in quest of entertainment, he approached the hermitage of Jajali Muni at the place where the Ganga meets the ocean. Casting a fishhook into the water, he caught many fish, despite the repeated protests of the sage. Like a crane stalking fish in the shallows, time and again the wicked-hearted demon enjoyed his sport, exhausting the patience of Jajali Muni. Incensed by the foolishness of Utkala, who, steeped in ignorance, had no understanding of the goal of life, that perfect sage touched water and cursed the demon with the words, "Because you eat fish like a crane, then become a crane." At that instant, Utkala, losing his opulence, power, and beauty, became a great crane with a long pointed beak and billowy white feathers. Repeatedly appealing to the sage for mercy, the demon invoked the compassion of Jajali Rishi, who said, "During the Vaivasvata Manvantar, at the conclusion of the 28th cycle of Dwapara Yuga, and in the area of Mathura, within Bharatvarsha, while sporting in the circle of Raj by the bank of the Yamuna, Sri Krishna, the Supreme Person, will absorb you into his bodily effulgence." Offering his blessings, the sage disappeared, and Utkala, trapped in that form of ignorance, wandered the worlds as the great Bakasura. So that's where Bakasura came from. One day, while herding his calves in the company of Sri Balaram and the Gopas, Sri Krishna saw the great crane, once known as Utkala, by the Yamuna's shore. Its form was like a great snow-capped mountain. Its feet were like gigantic trees. Its squawking was like the rumbling of clouds, and its beak appeared like a thunderbolt. Surging forward with its wings outspread, its beak open, its rapacious tongue slashing, Baka attacked Sri Krishna and swallowed him whole, while the little cowherd boys fled here and there in fear of their lives. When the Gopas turned to see their beloved Gopal gone, They wept as if their hearts were about to break. Falling to the ground in sorrow, their lamentation attracted the demigods, who appeared in the sky above the demon, hiding behind the clouds. When the Devas understood the gravity of the situation, they agreed to kill the demon and save Sri Krishna, now sitting in Bakasura's belly. The demigods are going to save Krishna. With his thunderbolt, Indra hit the demon. With his danda, Brahma struck him unconscious. With his trident, Shiva cut off one wing, and with his sharp sword, Kuvera cut off the other. Vayu struck him with his wind weapon. Yama beat him with his danda. Surya pierced him with 100 sharp arrows, and Soma struck him with his ice weapon. Agni burned his feathers with fire. Varuna tied him with a rope, and Bhadrakali smashed him with her mace. Although cut, slashed, burned, frozen, tied, and pierced, having lost consciousness many times and feeling great pain, Bakasura did not die. His head broken, that very wicked and powerful demon rose, shook his body, and roared like thunder. And roaring like thunder, chased the demigods with his sharp beak, making them flee. With the encouragement of the Deva Rishis, Brahma Rishis, and Brahmanas, and unhappy by the confined space and the bad smells in the demon's stomach, Krishna was not happy in there. Sri Krishna expanded his delicate form and caused the crane to spit him out. Although Bakasura relentlessly tried to catch Gopal in his beak, Sri Krishna cleverly evaded his attack and, rushing between the crane's legs, caught his tail and threw him to the ground. Frustrated, the demon once again opened its beak and, staggering forward, attacked Sri Krishna, who stood before him like the child god of death. Catching hold of the crane's beaks with both hands, Govinda split them like an elephant breaking a tree branch, bringing to an end Bakasura's long reign of terror. As the demon died, his effulgent soul entered the body of Sri Krishna, while the demigod showered flowers and shouted, "Jai, Jai!" The Gopas, surrounding their beloved Krishna, embraced him, massaged his limbs, and while lovingly touching him, said, "Dear friend, you have certainly been saved from the jaws of death today." Then, keeping Gopal in their midst, cheering, dancing, and singing, they herded their calves back to the village of Maharaj Nanda and recounted the story of Sri Krishna's deeds to their astonished parents. Thus, one of the many pastimes of Sri Krishna was concluded on the banks of the divine Yamuna River, which is always associated with his eternal Leela, his eternal associates, and Sri Vrindavan Dham. So this is about the rivers of Raj. And so we heard about the important pastime that took place in the bank of the Yamuna River. So next section. In the transcendental realm of Goloka, which is situated far beyond the material world and remains inaccessible even to the greatest jnanis and yogis, flows the beautiful Yamuna River. Her blackish form resembles a sapphire necklace or the blue lotus garland worn by the goddess of Vrindavan. The waters of Yamuna Devi are the liquid form of divine love and taste like a mixture of grape juice, sugar, and milk. After bathing with the gopis, the musk that anoints the body of Sri Krishna mixes with the kumkum decorating their breasts and scents the water with an intoxicating aroma. Yamuna Devi's waves are her overflowing transcendental bliss, and they sound like the pure melodies of the Samaveda, glorifying the ever-youthful prince of Vrindavan. These ever-dancing waves are decorated with blue, red, pink, and golden lotus buds, and are laced with an unlimited variety of water blossoms unique only to her. The shores of the Yamuna are sometimes decorated with groves of fragrant kadamba trees, and sometimes with forests of golden champaka trees. Scattered here and there are pure white beaches of diamond dust, and the riverbanks are always decorated with many jewels, which are the ecstatic symptoms of Vraj's soil when it meets to discuss the ever-flowing glories of Nanda Nandana with the waters of Yamuna Devi. Oh, wow. The soil, the soil of Vrindavan meets with the waters of Yamuna Devi there on the beach, and they discuss the ever-flowing glories of Krishna. So the Yamuna and the soil on the beach, they have a conversation. Many playful fish swim in her waters, sometimes jumping, sometimes diving, always relishing the varying currents of Yamuna Devi's inconceivable devotion to Sri Hari. These fish sometimes become stiff with ecstasy and then resemble the bejeweled playthings Balakrishna keeps in the toy vaults at Nandagram. The large turtles living in the shallows are the wisdom of the personified Vedas, having attained sarva gya, full cognizance, by eating the marine vegetation of the Yamuna. What a way to get knowledge. The turtles get full of knowledge by eating the plants that are growing in the Yamuna. On either shore, glistening jewel staircases lead to many singhasanas, or resting places and temples, which overflow with unlimited paraphernalia for Sri Krishna's service, and are always kept in full supply by Vrindadevi. There are innumerable groves of flowering trees, vines, bushes, and creepers, whose rainbow colors and varied scents create an atmosphere that enchants the mind and invigorates the senses. The pollen of those flowers decorates the waters just as spices are added to a beverage for flavor. So all the pollen from the flowers, from all the flowering trees, vines, bushes, and creepers that grow on the bank of the Yamuna, that pollen goes into the Yamuna, and each type of pollen has a different flavor, just like spices that you add to something. So then the Yamuna becomes flavored in different ways by pollen. There are beautiful deer delighting in the forest groves and many other animals who achieve perfection by drinking the intoxicating potion of Yamuna's waters. Birds of all species incessantly sing the glories of Sri Krishna as they become intoxicated by their own kirtan and the blissful atmosphere of Raj. The breezes blowing through the foliage are scented with the fragrance of Yamuna Devi's waters, and cooled by the spray thrown up by her hand-like waves. When one atomic particle of that divine fragrance strays from its service to Govinda, it falls to the material world and is known as the breeze from the Malaya hills. Interesting. So sometimes some particles of like little water droplets in the air apparently stray from the service. They get blown away from Govinda's service by their desire to not serve Govinda, and they end up falling down to the material world. Many Sarabi cows, which means that each water droplet there in the breeze is a conscious spirit soul, like a devotee, basically. Many Sarabi cows graze on the tender grasses growing by the banks of the Kalindi, whose happy smile is the white foam of her waves that rivals the brilliance of the nearby herds and reflects the billowing clouds overhead. When the cows drink the divine water and eat the luscious grass, their milk becomes imbued with Yamuna's potency, which further enhances the many mind-enchanting preparations served by Mother Yashoda to Krishna Balaram for their meals. Wow, so Krishna grazes his cows there by the bank of the Yamuna. And when the cows get thirsty, they go and drink Yamuna water. And it's saying that when they drink that divine water, then their milk becomes imbued with the potency of the Yamuna. And then Mother Yashoda uses that Yamuna potent milk to make different milk sweets for Krishna. So Mother Yashoda's love is going into the sweets. The love of the cows who produce the milk is going to the sweets. Yamuna, the love of Yamuna Devi that was drunk by the cows is also going into the sweets. It's a lot of love from different sources going into Krishna's milk sweets. Yogapit is on the bank of the Kalindi and is also known as Govinda Stali. Shaped like the back of a turtle and looking like 1,000-petaled lotus, it is a raised area of land surrounded on its eastern and western sides by the current of the northerly flowing Yamuna. This yoga pit is full of many flowering kadamba, bakul, banyan, bael, ashok, parijata, shantika, and sandal trees. which are embraced by passionate vines and surrounded by sitting platforms fashioned from sapphire, ruby, or moonstone, reaching to the ankles, knees, hips, or navel. In the center of this charming forest is a great desire tree, whose broad trunk of shimmering gold cleaves into many branches of white crystal, and then further divides into innumerable beautiful sub-branches of sapphire. The branches and twigs are further ornamented with emerald leaves, crystal flowers, delicate ruby buds, and fruits shaped like jeweled baskets. These divine fruits fulfill Sri Krishna's every desire and provide clothing, ornaments, scents, and fragrant powders for the prince of cowherds. Known as the king of desire trees, this tree is embraced by many golden vines, which appear like its attendant ministers, and whose flowers are naturally shaped like garlands. Yeah, I was reading in Ananda Vrindavan Champu by Kavi Karnapur, a description of Vrindavan, that in Vrindavan there are trees that are made of jewels, and they give jewel flowers and jewel fruits, and they have jeweled platforms around them. So very interesting. At the base of this Kalpataru, surrounded by jeweled steps on its 8 sides, and with a smaller tree at each corner, is a bejeweled temple that inspires wonder and delight. Within the temple is a golden singhasana, which appears like a flying 8-petaled lotus, whose wings are its unsurpassable luster. This extraordinary sight is the sitting place of the divine couple, the place of their confidential loving pastimes, the abode of all transcendental bliss, and the very summit of Vrindavan. The sand of the Yamuna's bank defeats the cool splendor of camphor, made twice as smooth by the footprints of Sri Krishna and tinted red with the foot lacquer of the gopis as they blended moonlight into the sand with their nocturnal dancing. Here and there are scattered flower garlands, remnants of chewed betel, and discarded ornaments left by Sri Krishna and the gopis as prasadam of the Maharasa for Yamuna Devi's pleasure. Yamuna Devi is very attached to these moonlit pastimes full of melodic singing, merry music, joyful laughter, and the vibration of the flute. In an attempt to retain the memory of these wonderful nights, she moves slowly by Govinda's Dali, her waters sometimes knee-deep, sometimes up to the chest, and sometimes over the head. As the love-intoxicated current of Yamuna Devi's blackish water flows past the infinite boundaries of Vraj, she meets the golden waters of Ganga Devi, just arrived from the land where Sri Krishna takes the golden form of Radhika and constantly sings the Sankirtan of his own holy names. That's Navadvip. Doing pranams to her elder sister, Yamuna Devi inquires, "O Devi, where are you going in such a great hurry, your currents furling with the excitement of a great mission?" Ganga Devi replies, "I have been ordered by Gaura Krishna to go with you to earth. We have been instructed to participate in his pastimes as he appears, first as Shama Roy in Vrindavan, and then as Gauranga in Navadvip. His unquenchable desire is to liberate the conditioned souls from the clutches of birth and death and restore them to their original position here in Goloka." Enlivened by the order of their Lord, the 2 sister rivers combined and began to flow as one throughout the unlimited planets of Vaikuntha. They were like a braided chain of silver and gold, and with their purifying waters they pleased the blissful inhabitants of the spiritual world. At the entrance to the kingdom of matter, they paused to see the great darkness which is born of the forgetfulness of Govinda's service, and became overwhelmed by compassion for its sorrowful inhabitants. As soon as they were entering the boundary, crossing the boundary into the material world, they felt great compassion for all the conditioned souls. At that time, the toenail, good timing. The Lord instructed Yamuna Devi and Ganga Devi to both come to the material world, and there they are at the threshold about to enter into the material world. And then it says, "At that time, the toenail of Lord Vamanadev protruded through the coverings of the universe, like sunlight entering an impenetrable forest of misery. Gazing from the sacrificial arena of Bali Maharaj, he saw the 2 sisters still hesitant to leave the spiritual realm, and thus inspired them by his all-loving glance. Taking heart once again, the transcendental waters of Ganga Yamuna moved forward and descended upon Dhruvaloka to take darshan of the great devotee of the Lord and receive his assurance of safety for their onward journey. They then flowed down to the planets of the seven sages, and from there were transported by countless celestial airplanes to the moon. As they reached the abode of Lord Brahma atop Mount Meru, Yamuna Devi became frightened at the passion of the conditioned souls and hid within the waters of the Ganga. From the golden peak of this mountain, the current divided into four, and the southerly branch made its way to the famous Himalaya mountain range. Ganga Devi bid farewell to Yamuna, who then cascaded down the Kalinda mountain and appeared at the place known as Yamunotri, continuing to flow quickly eastward through Indraprastha. Taking shelter of Emperor Yudhisthira and his brothers, Kalindi Devi, that's the Yamuna, continued to the boundary of Gokul, which is the earthly manifestation of Goloka. There she began to flow slowly through the transcendental playground of Sri Krishna and eventually rested at Vishram Ghat in Mathura. To visit all the places of Sri Krishna's pastimes, Yamuna Devi divided into many branches, some flowing around Govardhan Hill, some by Varshana, some near Nandagram, and some around the many forests of Vraj. After completing her parikrama, Yamuna Devi once again began her journey in great sorrow, passing through Mahavan and finally crossing the border of Vrindavan until she once again met the Ganga at Prayag. Combining into one great stream, those divine sisters passed through the city of the king of devotees, Lord Mahadev, and proceeded in haste to Gupta Vrindavan, the nine-island abode known as Navadvip. In Navadvip Dham, Yamuna Devi stayed on the western bank, while Ganga flowed by the eastern bank. To fully appreciate the place of Gauranga's pastimes, they slowly flowed through all the 9 islands, relishing the manifestation of great compassion enshrined in the atmosphere of Navadvip. They reverentially viewed the place of Jagannath Mishra's house, the sacred yoga pit, where in Kali Yuga Lord Gora would make his divine appearance. And then, impelled by their itinerant nature, they continued on an easterly course with great regret. While approaching the saltwater ocean, the rivers took shelter of Lord Kapila's ashram, as demigods sang their glories and apsaras showered a monsoon of flowers. Overwhelmed by their impending separation, Yamuna Devi then spoke to Ganga Devi as follows. Dear sister, as the embodiment of compassion, you desire to continue throughout this forsaken place to purify the bewildered conditioned souls. I take the dust of your lotus feet. Please give me permission to depart for Goloka once again. With tears in her eyes, beautiful Ganga Devi said, O Yamuna, my beloved, when my waters are purified 100 times, then they are known as your waters. What can I say? Your fortune is unlimited. As you always embrace the body of Sri Krishna in your arms and caress his form with your hands. By the order of the Lord, I will descend to Patalaloka, but I shall long for the time to join you in the service of Radha Krishna in Goloka. Falling at each other's feet, shedding tears of sorrow, and repeatedly embracing while begging forgiveness for offenses, those sisters separated once again to execute the orders of the Lord. While Ganga Devi descended to the nether regions, Yamuna started to flow through the ocean, crossing the islands of Jambudvip, until she reached the golden mountains of Loka Aloka. Ascending their slopes, she retraced her previous course and once again entered Goloka, while the demigods and denizens of Vaikuntha showered flowers and sang songs of her, who purifies the 3 worlds and is the liquid form of love of God. Wow, so Yamuna Devi comes and flows through Vrindavan and Navadvip and into the sea, and then she flows back to Goloka Vrindavan. All things have their origin in Sri Krishna, the ultimate cause of all causes, both spiritual and mundane. Thus, the ultimate source of the Yamuna, like all things, is the one indestructible Supreme Person. If one searches for the immediate cause of the Kalindi, then it can be said that she is an expansion of Vishaka Devi, who takes this liquid form as the means to provide variegated pleasure for Sri Krishna. As Srimati Radharani is the feminine counterform of Govinda, and the embodiment of his infinite potencies. So Vishaka is her expansion, imbued with independent volition for the purpose of serving Radha Krishna's loving pastimes. To enhance the landscape of Vrindavan, Vishaka's offering of love to the divine couple includes eternally manifesting in the form of a river that flows throughout the spiritual and material worlds. The descent of Yamuna Devi from Goloka Vrindavan also coincides with the perspective of the demigods, who envisage the creation as a byproduct of their karma. Thus, Kalindi, who is known as Krishna because of her darkish complexion, is also known as the twin sister of Yamaraj and the daughter of the sun god Vivasvan. So the demigods have that perspective that Yamuna Devi is born into this world as the sister of Yamaraj. That's explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. And daughter of the sun god and sister of Yamaraj. But from the transcendental perspective, she doesn't take birth like an ordinary soul in this world, but she descends by the will of the Lord as a expansion of Vishaka, Radharani's friend Vishaka Saki, to serve the divine couple. After having come of age, Yamuna Devi informed her father that she was unwilling to marry anyone other than the Supreme Person, Lord Vishnu. Vivasvan advised Kalindi to moderate her marital goals, for Sri Krishna was very difficult to behold, even by the greatest demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. her father, Vivasvan, the sun god, was thinking Krishna's out of your league. Try someone else. However, Yamuna was not to be dissuaded from her determination, and she decided to perform severe austerities to obtain Sri Krishna as her husband. To please his daughter, Vivasvan constructed a residence within the waters of the Yamuna River near the Khandava forest. Residing there with great determination and an insatiable desire to achieve the shelter of Bhaktavatsala Sri Krishna, Kalindi Devi performed austerities and waited for the time when the Lord would bestow his mercy on her. After he constructed the Dwarka fort in the midst of the ocean, Sri Krishna regularly visited the Pandavas at Indraprastha, bound as he was by their affectionate family ties. On one such trip, while hunting in the forest not far from Kurukshetra, Krishna and Arjuna rested in the area of the Yamuna, within which was the residence of Kalindi. While refreshing themselves with the cool waters of the river, the daughter of the sun appeared in her very attractive form, decorated with glittering teeth and a smiling face. Making inquiries on behalf of his divine friend, Arjuna discovered how this beautiful maiden had come to live in this secluded place without even a guardian. With great tears of submission in her eyes, her hands folded in surrender, and a voice quaking with emotion, Yamuna Devi expressed her desire to accept only Sri Krishna as her husband. Knowing that even the most difficult request from the Lord can be easily realized by the grace of his unflinching servitor, and recognizing Arjuna to be not only a devotee, but Sri Krishna's close friend, and seeing him as the only boat to cross over the great ocean of obstacles that had the fulfillment of her desire as its farthest shore, Yamuna Devi fell at Falguni's feet and bathed them with her tears. Moved by Yamuna Devi's devotion, Arjuna conveyed her desire to Govinda, who, always bound by his devotees' love and always ready to fulfill their desires, immediately understood the situation and accepted her hand. Upon their return to Dwarka, the long desire of Yamuna Devi was fulfilled as Sri Krishna married her in regal splendor and installed her in one of his great palaces, where she lived happily in the association of the Supreme Person, dedicating herself to fulfilling his every desire. This completes a brief description of the story of Yamuna Devi, the eternal associate of Sri Krishna and Sri Vrindavan Dham. Great devotees bathe in her pure waters, receive her blessings of pure devotion, and glorify her with wonderful prayers. Wow, that was a very long and complicated story of Yamuna Devi. We heard how she's a river, how she descends from the spiritual world along with Ganga Devi, and then how she's also an expansion of Vishaka, and how she's also simultaneously the daughter of the sun god and sister of Yamaraj, and as the daughter of the sun god, she takes on a human form, and she performs austerities to be able to get Krishna as her husband. And Krishna finally appears, and by the mercy of Arjuna, who's the middleman here in the relationship, and he's a devotee, so she takes shelter of the devotee of Arjuna, and Krishna accepts her as his wife. So they go to Dwarka and they get married, and Yamuna Devi becomes one of Krishna's queens of Dwarka. So very interesting. Yamuna Devi is a very great personality that has many facets to her relationship with Krishna, and many different ways in which she serves Krishna in her various forms. So that brings us to our time. Yamuna Devi ki jai. So tomorrow we'll hear some glories. We'll recite the Yamunastakam, the prayer written by Sri Rupa Goswami about the glories of the Yamuna, and we'll continue with some pastimes of Yamuna. Jai, Venu-gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo.